Welcome to Part 2A of our ELA Spring Webinar Series for Grades 6 through English 2. These recordings are based on the spring webinars we hosted in March 2025. The hosted webinars consisted of 2 sessions for Grades 6 through English 2. To reduce the length of the recordings, we have broken each of those 2 sessions into 2 sections. This is Part 2A in a series that also contains 1A, 1B, and 2B. In Parts 1A and 1B, we looked at some of the sample release items and the assessment specifications documents. Part 2A will focus on the TDW item and how to support argumentative writing instruction. On SC Ready and the EOCEP for English 2, text sources will be provided. In the classroom, however, teachers will either provide sources or guide students through the research process that will culminate with a written argument. Summative assessment will provide only print sources for the TDW item. Classroom instruction and assessment may include other media sources. We are not teaching a test item. We are teaching the writing process. The more opportunities students have to write, receive ungraded feedback, and revise, the better they will do on the entire writing session of the SC Ready assessment and the EOCEP for English 2. Consider this: if we only teach writing to prepare for a test item, we send the message to students that writing is only valuable for a test item. This is the sample release item for 6th grade. If you teach grades 7, 8, and English 2, the discussion around this TDW item will still apply to you. We will add the specific elements for those grades in just a bit. In their claim, students should take a position on whether the Netherlands should reclaim land from the sea. It is important to note that unlike the TDA prompts, there is no set format to the TDW tasks. While all argumentative tasks ask the student to take a position or side and persuade the readers of his or her perspective, not all tasks will be formatted exactly like this one. If instruction focuses on the argumentative writing process as outlined in the grade level indicators, students will be prepared for the TDW task regardless of its presentation on SC Ready or the EOCEP for English 2. Before we look at samples of student writing, let's revisit the grade level indicators for C 1.1. It is important for teachers to know when academic language is introduced in the 2024 ELA standards, which language was not in the 2015 ELA standards, and how the argumentative writing expectations build from one year to the next. Here you see 5th grade through English 2. The steps here only show the significant language and skills. These are not the complete indicators. In 2015, the communication indicator moved from opinion in 4th grade to claim in 5th grade. That continues in the 2024 ELA standards. Why is this important to teachers? This year's 6th grade students should have entered the grade being able to write a claim. This year's 6th grade students may not have as strong of an understanding of organizational structure within argumentative writing as next year's 6th graders will because of the shift in the grade level indicators. 5th grade teachers will continue to introduce claim in argumentative writing. This does not change from the old to new standards. The 2024 grade level indicator is the first time students in 6th grade will use the term evidence instead of facts. In the 2015 indicator, it was not the first time. Also, alternative perspective is introduced for the first time in 6th grade. This year's 6th graders will be familiar with the term evidence because they had it in previous year's instruction using the 2015 standards. In a few years from now, it will be new to students in 6th grade. Alternative perspective is brand new for all 6th grade students and will continue to be new. The expectation for the TDW item is that students simply acknowledge that someone else feels differently about the topic than the student writer feels. In the 2024 indicators, 7th grade is the first time students acknowledge a counterclaim. Why is this important? 7th grade teachers will need to use the term counterclaim instead of alternate or opposing claim, which was part of the 2015 standards. 7th grade students will need to make that change as well. The expectation for the TDW item is the same as the expectation in 6th grade. Students will only have to acknowledge that someone has a different opinion than the student writer. This is why the change in academic vocabulary is important for students. You will notice in this table that we included English 1. Although there is no longer an EOCEP for English 1, it is important we look at how the indicator shifts between 8th grade and English 2. This year, the term counterclaim will be new for 8th grade teachers and students. In the past, it was alternate or opposing claim. Next year's 8th grade students should enter 8th grade familiar with the term. The 2015 standards did not use the term refute. This term will be new for teachers and students this year. After this year, it should not be new for teachers or students in grades 8, English 1, and English 2. For the TDW item, students in 8th grade and English 2 will need to acknowledge a counterclaim and provide at least one reason or piece of evidence that shows why the counterclaim is inferior to the student's claim. Students in English 2 may choose to acknowledge and refute more than one, but are not required to. Now that we have discussed the indicators, let's go back to our 6th grade item. Even though the item shown here is for 6th grade, it is still relevant for teachers of higher grades. We will address claim and counterclaim shortly. On the left, you see the TDW task. In blue is the actual question the students must answer. Notice that the goal is for the student writer to choose one side or position on this topic and to persuade the reader to agree with the chosen position. To be successful on the TDW item, the student must choose one side. The student cannot argue for both positions. On the right, you see an excerpt from C1.1a. While this TDW item is from 6th grade, this part of the indicator is present in C1.1 for grades 5 and up. The task also reminds students to use evidence from the passages and their own ideas to support the claim. Their own ideas includes reasons. One question teachers frequently ask is, do the students have to write in third person on the TDW item? The answer is no. This item clearly tells students to decide their position, persuade readers of their perspective, and to use their own ideas. So this item encourages students to write in the first person. What happens if the student writes in third person? Does that affect their score? Not necessarily. If the student writes in third person and stays in third person throughout the response, it will not affect the score. Point of view is not in the scoring rubric. The 6th grade task reminds students to acknowledge an alternative perspective. The 7th grade task reminds students to acknowledge a counterclaim. The 8th grade and English 2 tasks remind students to acknowledge and refute a counterclaim. We will look at these in depth in just a moment. Let's look at a sample of a strong 6th grade claim. This student's response received a 3 of 4 on the TDW item. The student uses the first person point of view by stating, "I know that." Remember, in everyday writing, the point of view depends on the purpose and audience. Writing instruction in grades 6 and up should provide students with opportunities in both first and third person so students can understand how a writer's purpose impacts craft. The student clearly states his or her position. Taking the polder land will benefit more than it will hurt. The student then provides 2 reasons that are based on the text provided on the test, conveniences to the Dutch population, and reducing natural problems. Now let's look at a weak claim. This student received a TDW score of 1. You can view the full response and scoring justification in the 6th grade TDW sampler. In this task, the student is asked to take a position on the topic and make a claim. This student takes the position that the Netherlands should be polderland so more people can live there. The student's claim is unclear because the writer does not clarify how the polderland is created or why it would give the country more living space. As a result of the weak claim, the rest of the student's response is disorganized and confusing to the reader. Teaching claim is essential. All argument writing should begin with teaching students how to write a claim. This year, students in 6th grade may have less experience with reading and writing claims. However, next year's 6th grade students should leave 5th grade prepared in both reading and writing. Students should have ample opportunities to write and revise claims before they are expected to write a full argument. This applies to all grade levels. How do we know if a student understands claim? Before writing arguments, the student must have a solid understanding of what a claim is. If the student does not understand what a claim is or how it functions within an argument, the student will not be able to produce a clear claim in his or her writing. Before a student can effectively write an argument, he or she must be able to write a clear claim. Using a mentor text with this student may help him or her recognize and evaluate the difference between a clear defensible claim and a vague, unclear claim. Ask the student to annotate a short argument showing the claim and how the claim is supported throughout the written work. Then ask the student to do the same with his or her written work. Have the student explain the differences between the 2 works. Ask the student what he or she could change in his or her work to make a stronger claim. This is just one way to formatively assess which students have an understanding and which students need additional instruction and support. What if the student needs additional support? Use explicit instruction to demonstrate writing a strong claim. As you model writing the claim, explain to the student what you are doing and why. Have the student write what you write and annotate what you are saying about your process. Allow the student time to ask clarifying questions. Once the student understands what a claim is and the process of writing one, provide him or her with several different claims, some that are strong and some that are weak. Ask the student to evaluate each claim and explain why it is strong or weak. For the weak claims, ask the student to rewrite it to make it better. This can also be done in a small group. Once the student can write a clear defensible claim, he or she will move on to carrying the claim throughout the written work. Provide the student with a multi-paragraph argument. Ask the student to first highlight or mark the claim and then highlight or mark how the writer carries the claim throughout the text. Organizing the response. A clear claim directly impacts the organization of the argument. This 6th grade student makes a clear, defensible claim. The student claims that the polder system is not a good idea because it is expensive. The student goes on to give additional reasons, but we are only going to look at the expense today. This student stays focused on proving his position that the Dutch should not reclaim the polder land because it is expensive. This aligns with C1.1a. In blue, you will notice paraphrasing of text that is used as evidence to support the student's reason that reclaiming the land is extremely expensive. In green, you will notice a direct quote that supports the reason. This aligns with C1.1b. Continued, organizing the response. In orange, you will see how the student uses transitional strategies to organize the response. The words and phrases this student uses are well placed, show the relationship between the claim, reasons, and evidence, advance the argument, and work to organize the information. They also make it easier for the reader to follow the argument. Lastly, the structure is appropriate to the purpose and task. You should also notice this is not a formulaic response. There is not a set pattern being used by the student to structure and organize his response. The structure and organization are driven by the claim. I am pointing this out because I want to discourage formulaic writing for all students. Formulaic writing does not work for all students and can negatively impact some students' TDW scores. Another disclaimer about formulaic writing is that the formulas do not all work for all modes of writing. Here you see one example of a formative way to determine which students need additional instruction to understand what transitions are and how they work. Just as writing formulas do not work for all types of writing, neither do all transitions. We know that transitional words and phrases must fit the purpose of the writing and the structure of the writing. This is why we must teach students how to apply the transitions. Keep your anchor charts as a reference, but the instructions should focus on how to apply the correct transitions, not just identify transitions. In 6th grade, students are asked to acknowledge an alternative perspective. In 7th grade, this becomes counterclaim. In terms of the TDW item, the expectations are the same for acknowledging an alternative perspective or acknowledging a counterclaim. Here you see the student mentions the pros. He then provides a few reasons in blue that show the reasoning and evidence of the alternative perspective. This 6th grade student actually goes beyond the expectations of just acknowledging. Refuting a counterclaim. While not required until 8th grade, this student writer also provides a specific reason as to why his claim that the Dutch should not create polderland is more sound than the alternative perspective. You can see this inside the red boxes. Keep in mind, this paper was written by a 6th grade student who went above and beyond. This may not be the strongest sample of a refutation for English 2. English 2 teachers are encouraged to visit our Quick Links for Assessment webpage to access the color-coded student TDW responses and watch the video that explains the coding. This video will provide more information on the expectations at higher grade levels. We also encourage 7th and 8th grade teachers to examine the English 2 TDW item sampler. How do we know if our students understand how to acknowledge an alternative perspective or counterclaim? This is an example of a formative way for you to quickly determine which students understand and which students need additional instruction. Begin with a text. Ask students to highlight and label the author's claim and the alternative perspective or counterclaim. If the student cannot find the alternative perspective or counterclaim in the text, the student doesn't understand it enough to write one. So what do we do? You can also do this with reasons and evidence. Let's start with one way to support students in acknowledging an alternative perspective or counterclaim. This will work for students in grades 6 and up. This can also be a small group activity if you have multiple students who need additional instruction. This is not something that can just be handed to students with a list of instructions. The key part of this strategy comes in numbers 3 and 5, which involve directly supporting the students. First, provide the student with the definitions of claim and alternative perspective or counterclaim. Other elements can be added if needed. With each definition, provide a sample of each. Explain to the student why the claim is a strong claim and how the alternative claim or counterclaim opposes that claim. Make sure students annotate their papers with what you are explaining. Provide the student with slips of paper. Some slips will contain a claim and others will contain the matching alternative perspective or counterclaim. Ask the student to match each claim with its appropriate alternative perspective or counterclaim. Ask the students to explain their matches. Provide feedback and reasoning if there are any mismatches. Once the student is successful with this task, return to the initial formative assessment. Can the student now apply his or her knowledge to a bigger piece of text? If you teach 8th grade, English 1, or English 2, this is a way you can add on to the previous formative assessment. Here we are presenting it in a small group setting. We chose to do this because this is a new skill in the 2024 ELA standards. This can be reduced to a single student if necessary. Add refutation to step 1 of the previous slide. The second step will be the same, but with the additional element. The third step will be the same, but with the additional element. Number 4 will require a small group of students. Provide the group with a labeled claim and counterclaim. Then provide the group with multiple slips of paper, each with one reason or piece of evidence that supports the claim, and multiple slips, each with one reason or piece of evidence that supports the counterclaim. Ask students to match the supporting reasons and evidence with the claim and to match the supporting reasons and evidence with the counterclaim. Continued. Again, you can do this with multiple groups. Students will need the opportunity to discuss their work and rationales with other students and the teacher. Step 6, ask the group or groups to explain their matches. Step 7, if anything is mismatched, show the group where they went wrong and explain why their reason or evidence should go with the other element and how it better supports the other element. Once the group is successful, return to the initial task with a full text. Argumentative writing is a process. Students must have time to practice writing arguments and have ample opportunity to revise arguments. Teach to the grade level writing indicators, not to the TDW rubric. If a student can write a strong claim and argument, he or she can apply those skills to any argumentative writing task, not just to a test item. As a reminder, SC Ready and the end of course exam will assess all modes of writing through standalone writing items. The text-dependent writing item is only one item. The English 2 TDW sampler includes color-coded student responses and a TDW support video outlining the expectations of argumentative writing, including claims and counterclaims. We recommend that all 7th and 8th grade teachers also watch this video. This is the third recording in a series of 4 for ELA teachers in grades 6 through English 2. Thank you for watching this recording.